Hey everybody, so today we are having a conversation about a topic which often goes undiscussed but is very, very, very important. We are talking about heavy duty trucks, we're talking about fuel economy, and we are talking about safety. This is a really important subject which may not be, the most glamorous. It's always more fun to go tow big trailers up a hill, but it probably affects more lives than not. So Case, give me some background. Why are we talking about HD trucks today?
Well, it's because we just recently got the updated list from the IIHS for 2023 top safety picks, and there are two trucks on that list, Rivian R1T, as well as the Toyota Tundra so far. But it brings up an interesting point when it comes to HD trucks because surprisingly, especially for vehicles that sell so often into fleets and that are bought by a lot of regular consumers, it is surprisingly difficult to find information on fuel economy and safety.
That's right. Yeah. So we are talking about three organizations today, three separate websites, and talking about what kind of information is out there for HD truck consumers and what information is just flat out missing. So you mentioned IIHS. That stands for the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. They are an independent organization that purchases new vehicles and then runs them through a number of crash tests, check out their headlight safety, their pre-collision systems, and publish these reports so that consumers know what are the safest vehicles on the road. Well, IIHS does not test HD trucks. Andre talked to them a little while back asking why. They said the return on investment just isn't there on HD trucks. I personally disagree. We're talking about a category in the hundreds of thousands of units now. And right, let's give some background. It used to be back in the day, HD trucks were more or less reserved for working applications.
Yeah, if you had a farm or a business, maybe you would buy an HD truck because you needed that extra capability, but it's not at all uncommon for people now to drive HD trucks regularly. I daily an HD truck in the winter.
And we see it every single day. If you live, basically anywhere in the U.S., you'll see 2500s by Ram, 2500s by GM, Ford F-250s driving around with their families in their truck, right, being used as daily commuters. And we're not talking about like even 2500s, 3500s, dualies, gasoline trucks, diesel trucks. These are trucks that are being used now as commuter vehicles. And I think that the safety results and the fuel economy results need to reflect that fact. Because let's dive into fuel economy a little bit. So there's a wonderful website you can go to. It's called it's called fueleconomy.gov, and it's the official U.S. Department of Energy fuel economy database. So here in this database, you can go in and you can find the official MPG rating of just about every new car and truck except
HD trucks.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly right. And why is that? Well, if we dive into Wikipedia here, it's based on the truck classification. So, for example, Class 1 trucks, a light duty, vehicles like the Colorado, the Canyon, the Ford Ranger, and it's based on the weight limits essentially, right? So up to 6,000 pounds. Then you've got Class 2A, the 1500 trucks, the Sierra Silverado 1500, the F-150, Ram 1500. That's Class 2A, light-duty truck, right? We're talking GVWs up to 8,500. And then you have Class 2B, 8,500 to 10,000. That's the Silverado 2,500, the Sierra 2,500, the F-250, the Ram 2,500s.
Yeah.
And then you get to Class 3, medium-duty, over 10,000 pounds, and then of course, above that. And when you start talking about vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of over 8,500, they are exempt from reporting their fuel economy.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the EPA doesn't track what the emissions on these vehicles are. It's not to say that there isn't any testing that's done with them. They just don't publish the same amount of information, the same data that you get on other vehicles that have less than 8,500 gross vehicle weight rating.
And as I understand it, the reason behind that is because those 8,500 and above vehicles were at one point intended to be like commercial vehicles, right? This was designed to make it so that someone buying a box truck, the manufacturer didn't have to go through the whole process of reporting the fuel economy. But nowadays, when you consider these trucks are getting heavier and heavier, the capability is going up and up and up, and you factor in the fact that people are driving these every day, it's a big oversight that you cannot get published fuel economy numbers on 2,500 trucks, 3,500 trucks, be it single rear wheel or dualies. And this is a really important thing. So that's why Andre has really been pushing fuel economy tests recently, right? So we can independently test the Cummins, the Power Strokes, the Duramaxes of the world to kind of give you an idea of, what kind of fuel economy you can get in the real world. But our testing is good, but it's nowhere near as thorough as what a manufacturer would have to submit to the EPA, or right, what the EPA would look into.
Because they have to do that full time. Fuel economy test is just a portion of what we do, but they have to do it again full time. And even if you're not looking for more regulation in the vehicle that you buy, just having that data to say, okay, I want to pick this truck versus some other truck because it gets better fuel economy and that's going to save me money when I'm towing. And it would also make the manufacturers likely to be more competitive with each other when it comes to chasing better fuel economy.
I am selling one of my all-time favorite cars, my fully electric Mini Cooper SC, and it's up for auction right now over at TFL Bids. I think one of you are going to get a screaming deal on this fully electric Mini. Check out all that and more over at tflbids.com.
Now, here's where things get even more interesting, right? Because let's talk about the world of electric vehicles, especially electric trucks often are very heavy. They have high GVWRs. Well, companies like Rivian go out of their way to actually report on the fueleconomy.gov website their official range and efficiency numbers. So you can see here, 314 miles of range. That's the EPA number, 70 mpge combined, right? So that's great. I love that they do that. However, if you go to, for example, try to find a 2023 Hummer EV or a 2022 Hummer EV, it's missing altogether because that GVW was so high on that truck, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to go through this process. And really the only way that we were able to get those somewhat official numbers is someone went into the NHTSA official filings for the safety and the efficiency regulations on the truck and did all this digging into the paperwork to get those numbers. And then, of course, you can listen to the GM self-published number. But it would be great if GM went out of their way to actually, put this number onto the site, make it a publicly facing number that is something you can tie that truck to. And my dad actually pitched this to Ram a few years ago. I remember this conversation. He went up to their engineers and said, it'd be really cool if you guys would actually go out of your way to self-publish the MPG numbers on the 2500 and 3500. He thought that'd be a great way to add some credibility, great way to, build some confidence with the consumer base. Now, of course, one reason they may not want to do that is because when you're talking about such a large truck, 6'4", big heavy truck, especially in the gas case, right?
Yeah.
That number is probably going to be pretty low.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think that transparency in the long run would help their case.
Yeah, you could argue that might be a hard thing to pitch to marketing teams, but I mean, it's just surprising how difficult it is for the consumer to find any information like this about the truck that they might be spending almost six figures on at this point for a high-end, heavy-duty diesel truck.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a truck you go buy through a commercial route, right?
No.
Like you don't have to go to some fleet department to buy this truck. You can buy it alongside an F-150 and a Ranger and a
Right there on
Maverick.
the dealer lot, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk a little bit about IIHS. This is an organization that does really in-depth testing, more so beyond what like the NHTSA government board does. So they do stuff like small overlap, which is a test where they run a vehicle into a stationary object, but using only a small portion of the vehicle. It's a very difficult test, and it brought on some significant changes to vehicle manufacturing, right? It really made these companies improve their safety features on these trucks. They do really in-depth testing with emergency braking systems, both day and night. They go really in-depth in terms of headlights, right? And they compile all this data into really clear and easy to understand information. Now, the NHTSA, the government board in charge of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, does also publish safety reports, and you can see they do 2500 and 3500 trucks as well, but you get the overall rating, frontal crash, side crash, and rollover.
Yeah, it's not nearly as much information as you get from the IIHS, and because of the way that the IIHS breaks it down, and because of how thorough their testing is, it's reflected in a lot of the standard safety features that are available on most cars on the market. That even base model vehicles coming with a lot of standard features that these bigger trucks just don't have, partly because they're not included in that testing, and also partly because consumers in a larger vehicle don't tend to worry as much about safety because we tend to feel secure in a bigger vehicle, even though that's not necessarily the real world case of how it's going to go if something happens in a bigger vehicle.
I mean, if you're skidding on ice sliding toward a pole at 40 miles an hour, right?
That pole doesn't
The
care.
pole
if you're
doesn't
in a,
care if
in
you're
a
in
Ram or a Corolla.
Exactly right. And the other thing, too, about the NHTSA website is, say, like 2016 Ram 2500. I want to learn more information. I click on it. If this was IIHS, we'd have pictures, we'd have video clips showing how the vehicle's performed. Here we come to a, sorry, the page request could not be found, right? So this is just not very good. especially as a consumer. If I want to know the detailed information on how a vehicle performs in a rollover, the IIHS performs that. The NHTSA it doesn't do that nearly as well.
Yeah, and it would be, again, information that would be good to have because it would push the manufacturers to do more, because right now, not completely, but in a big way, they're kind of left to their own devices in terms of how safe they want to make a vehicle, because it's not something that you as the consumer can obviously pick out and say, well, this truck is safer than that truck. So it's
harder to compare.
Yeah, it's harder to compare. And even if you don't think that safety in these bigger trucks is an issue, go online and start looking up HD truck safety lawsuits, especially when it comes to rollovers. There are big issues.
Yeah, there have been many lawsuits in the past over rollovers. And then, like, for example, we talk about safety. For example, some manufacturers use their current cab technology in the 2500s the same as they do in the 1500s. Ram, for example, doesn't. Ram is still using the old cab, which was developed many years ago.
Yeah. So
compared to their new 1500 cab.
No major improvements in the safety of that cab design, because as anybody who's a Ram or a Cummins fan knows, the current gen, a lot of people call a 4.5 gen because it's not really a ground up new truck.
Right, so you're using that cab, safety structure from many years ago at this point now. But anyways, we wanted to bring this to light. We want to get your feedback. This is kind of an open forum, so be sure to leave us some comments. We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about this matter. And this has been Tommy.
And Case.
We'll see you in another video.